Ghana is the world's second largest cocoa producer, accounting for roughly 20 to 25% of global supply, with the industry acting as a cornerstone of the national economy and supporting over 800,000 smallholder families. Yet Ghana's cocoa industry is facing a severe financial crisis as private buyers now owe banks approximately $750 million and farmers over $200 million. Now, this debt trap was triggered by a perfect storm. That's global cocoa prices plummeted from record highs in 2024, while poor harvests caused by disease and bad weather reduced the number of crops available to sell. Furthermore, the industry regulator, that's Cocoa Board, allegedly diverted funds to non-core projects like road construction, leaving buyers without the cash needed to pay farmers and forcing them to take out high-interest bank loans they can no longer afford. So to prevent a total collapse of the sector, which supports over 1 million livelihoods, the Ghanaian government has slashed the price paid to farmers by nearly 30% to align with lower international market rates. And this move is intended to inject immediate liquidity into the system and stabilize the debts. So the government is seeking to restructure Cocoa Board's debts and reform the local market to ensure that farmers receive a guaranteed share of export prices, though the immediate result is a significant loss of income for the country's cocoa growers. Now, joining us to discuss more on this, we have Nicholas Arthur, FCCE Fellow Certified Chartered Economist in Ghana. And we also have Shadrach Kundi, International Security Analyst, African Center for International Affairs. Thank you for joining us on the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. So let me begin with you, Nicholas. I mean, we're looking at a staggering $750 million, that's about 8 billion cedis, owed to banks by licensed buying companies. With interest rates in Ghana remaining so high, what are we witnessing?
So we're witnessing a very dangerous situation in Ghana, especially for the sustainability and the livelihood of over 1 million people in the value chain of Ghana cocoa. So that is what we're talking about. And its rippling effect, the multiplier effect on the economy of Ghana is what we're looking at. Cocoa is the lifeblood of Ghana before the inception of oil production commercially in 2009, 2010. So that is the situation we have in our hands. The question is, what do we do to salvage the situation? There are multiple of things that we need to do as a country or as Cocoa Board. From where I sit and with my experience in this sector, there are three things we need to consider. First of all, we need to look at the production side, the productivity, the yield. Ghana has had a serious climate effect. We call it the El Nino, which caused a lot of problems for the Ghanaian ordinary farmer, thereby reducing the yield in 2020. If I have my figures here, we had 858,000 metric tons 2016, 2017, and then it rose. The highest peak was 1 million in 2020-2021 season. Then we were slapped by this unfortunate El Nino weather condition that not only affected Ghana, it affected Ivory Coast, which the two constitute close to 70% of the global output. So that is number one. Number two, what are the local effects apart from the weather? Was the illegal mining, which we call it galamsey in Ghana, that is threatening the survival of Ghana cocoa industry, because scientifically it's been proven by research that wherever we find cocoa beans or cocoa trees, there is an element of gold beneath the earth. And so where they find the cocoa is where they find they get the cocoa, is where they get the gold. So it means that it's now multiplying the people going into galamsey, this illegal mining, which is a major threat. That is also part of the effect of dwindling cocoa output over the years. That is number. And then number three is about how we will be able to leverage scientifically to improve the acreage in terms of how much we are able to get out of each acre of land that we plant cocoa. So these are the three things to do on the supply side, that is on the cocoa beans. Now we look at the outtakers. Now, by law, we have the licensed cocoa buyers whose duty is to buy the cocoa from the farm gate at a price established by Ghana government, and then the cocoa is now transferred back to the warehouses of Ghana Cocoa Board. And then the subsidiary of Ghana Cocoa Board, which is called Ghana Cocoa Marketing, they are to do the trading and the shipment of the cocoa. So they have to do the shipment to the buyers overseas, and then get the money flowing into the country.
Okay.
Now we look at the financing.
Just before you go ahead, we'll
okay.
come back to you. But just before you go ahead, let's hear from Shadrach as well. Shadrach, while men are often the face of the cocoa farm, it is the women who handle much of the fermentation, drying, and domestic budgeting. Now, when the liquidity dries up, is it the woman who must bridge the gap in the household? In your analysis, also, how is this $750 million debt impacting the economic agency of women in rural Ghana, who are often the last to be paid and the first to sacrifice?
Okay, so women will be impacted with this kind of shock that has happened within the market, in the sense that they are usually at the forefront or at the line of action when it comes to the cocoa itself. However, they are not usually the main owners of the cocoa. So they usually thrive on the various services that they provide in terms of cocoa drying, and also trying to also engage in certain activities within the cocoa production value chain. And being at the household level, it will be a very difficult situation for women, especially those within the rural areas in which the cocoa industry thrives, in the sense that once the economy dies down in this circumstance, they are the ones who are supposed to fend for the family. And despite the fact that men are also involved, usually the children are also left as burden for the women. And as a result, it also creates another layer of burden for the women. Going forward, meaning that since there will be less appeal for the production of cocoa, with how government was, the approach in which government used in announcing the framework towards reducing the prices, it will put more pressure on women, implying that more men will want to take the role in which women play within the value chain. And this will have an impact on women adversely.
Okay. Now, coming back to you, Nicholas, you're about to talk about the finance, but then before you do, President of the Licensed Cocoa Buyers Association recently warned that interest is piling up on these loans. Now, to be clear, if the LBCs cannot service the interest, who ultimately holds the bag? Is it the Ghanaian taxpayer through a future bailout, or who?
Yes, of course, it's a future bailout because Ghana Cocoa, fortunately, is centrally controlled, and Cocoa Board is an agency of Ghana. So when there's this debt, then of course Ghana government is going to bear, and that will be a burden on the taxpayer. So that is the fact.
All right. So go ahead and speak about
yes, I was going to talk about the financing aspect. So the financing here, over the years, in 1992, Ghana Cocoa kind of established itself into going into what we call a syndicated loan, because we didn't have our own money as a country to finance the purchase of the crop. So they instituted the syndication of the loan, which means that Ghana Cocoa Board, with its strong background in terms of what they have done historically, will now go to the money market with their credibility and then secure loan. And this loan, once secured, is given to the LBCs. Part is given to the LBCs, for the LBCs to go to the farm gates to buy at established rates set up by government. Once they did that, the cocoa is brought back to Cocoa Board. It is certified by the Quality Control of Ghana Division of Ghana Cocoa Board. They do the qualification in terms of quality, and then those ones are established. Cocoa Marketing, the subsidiary of Ghana Cocoa Board, is in charge of the trading and the shipment of the cocoa beans. So we have banking, we have a syndicated loan which comes in with an interest. Of course, I mean, looking at the background of cocoa, we look at interest of like 2 to 5%, and then the money gets into Bank of Ghana, which is distributed according to the terms of sale of the cocoa. So this has been the history until 2024, 2025, when Ghana had gone through financial crisis, and everybody knows this. And so then there was this arrangement with the main cocoa buyers, not the licensed buyers. So there are the main cocoa buyers who are in Europe and United States. So then advance money. So we had what we call 60-40, which means that the cocoa buyers, because we do forward sales, will advance 60% of the traded commodity. 60% is done to cocoa board to help the LBCs to purchase the crop. Once that is done, when cocoa is traded and shipped, documents are transferred from Ghana Cocoa Marketing to the buyers, and then the 40% additional is now sent back to Ghana. So this has been the financing for 2024, 2025. Then we are in 2025, 2026. The financing has changed. It's moved from 60 to 40, and it's now 80-20, meaning that once the cocoa is sent out or shipped to these buyers internationally, they would have advanced 80% upfront, and then the 20% is now brought back. So this is where we are. However, the licensed buyers, they face a serious crisis here because they are also to go into the money market, Ghana market, to secure loans from these commercial banks. And these commercial banks are here to make money. So of course, if you look at the economics that we have here, interest rate used to go around 30%. Now, fortunately, it's come down below 20 or 20%. So it means they go and bought and secure loans at the rate of 25%. So, for example, if cocoa is not moving, what is mean that they have a 25% that they need to pay to the bank against a collateral. So if you don't pay, the collateral you use in going into the agreement for the loan is going to suffer. The banks will now have to rely on the collateral and then demand their money. So it's a big issue on the LBCs in Ghana. Fortunately or unfortunately, these LBCs, the local ones, are the ones suffering because they are competing with LBCs established by these big multinational buyers. So they don't necessarily need to go to the bank to secure loan. The local ones are then forced to go to the local banks, and they are also competing with these international LBCs. So the local banks, of course, will now be, if your care is not taken, they will be folded out of the market. They'll be taken out of the market because of the natural flow of what we are just discussing, because they don't have the liquidity. Here, they need to rely on the banks at such high interest rates. So if you look at the other side of the coin, with the cocoa prices, with the cocoa glut right now being faced internationally, and the cocoa price going down against the backdrop of a high interest rate, you can just imagine what's going to happen to the LBCs in the two seasons to come if things do not normalize.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, now coming back to Shadrach. Shadrach, you've heard all that Nicholas has actually said, but we know that cocoa has historically been a source of immense pride and a ticket to the middle class in Ghana. But then with the government slashing prices by 30%, while the cost of living remains very high, why would any, for example, 20-year-old, stay on the farm? So are we witnessing not just a financial crash, but the permanent brain drain of the agricultural sector as the youth flee to Accra or the illegal mining pits?
So in terms of its impact on the youth, it's quite worrying because most of the youth do not have jobs. And this will become an avenue in discouraging the youth from engaging in the agricultural sector. Already, the appeal towards of the youth towards the agri sector has not been that high. This will be an enabling factor that will discourage them, in the sense that most of those who had invested into the cocoa sector are on the brink of losing some aspects of their monies, if not even making profits or even breaking even at this point. And as a result, it's quite a discouraging factor into it. Beyond just that, we look at other alternatives that have become available. Instead of using cocoa farms for maybe other means of livelihood in terms of maybe diversifying crops into maybe cashew or stuff like that. As my co-panelist mentioned, there's the cliche that anywhere cocoa thrives, gold thrives. And as a result, there is a fear that most of these cocoa farms who will leave their cocoa farms without monies in their pockets, will rather sell their lands to galamseyers, that's illegal miners, to ply their activities. And this will be to have a broader implication on our environmental sustainability as a country. Already we are fighting the canker of galamsey, and it can also feed into issues regarding governance within the environmental sustainability sphere. And this has cascading impact on the Ghanaian economy. It has cascading impact on our society, and it also it leaves a blot in the conscience of our leaders. We've been farming cocoa, putting them in bags since we started production of cocoa, and it has remained so till now. And to the extent that we cannot be able to create some form of a welfare citizen to protect farmers in this kind of states, it's quite disappointing to have been a farmer within these periods and to be a youth within the cocoa sector.
All right, now, in 2024, global cocoa prices touched an unprecedented $12,000, per ton, and critics are asking, where did that windfall go? Why was a buffer fund not established to protect the industry from the current crash to $4,000 per ton? That's quite a crash, from $12,000 per ton to $4,000 per ton. Nicholas?
Yes. I mean, if you say windfall, yes, there was windfall. But you have to notice that, you have to know that Cocoa Board was already in debt. So even if you got windfall, what the natural thing to do was to use part of the windfall to offset some of the accumulated or the legacy debt, right? That is number one. If we are talking about solutions, yes, in my opinion, and where I said, I thought that not even for 2024 alone, we should, as a country, knowing how the cocoa trade is, should have, in my opinion, created an extra account that every season would drop, let's say, 10 to 15% of that revenue that is accrued from the cocoa sale into that account, right? Then by 5 years or 5 seasons, we would have accumulated enough money to be able to be self-sustaining and not to go to the money market to borrow to finance the purchase of the crop. We could have owned our own money and decide to hold the ball in our own corner. The point is that because you don't have your own, you rely on syndicated loan, or you depend on the buyer to finance it. If you have your own money, what you can do is that you can properly hedge. So, for example, you can hedge with 70% futures, right? And then 30% or 50-50 for spot. So that if you did spot, 50% spot, for example, if the cocoa price rose to 12,000, for example, as happened in 2024, then you could then take advantage of the hike and make more money. But because you are at the back and call of the buyers, you have already fixed the cocoa price at a point. So you have an average fixed price, which is done by Ghana Cocoa Market Trading Room based on certain scenarios. So they do the analysis and fix it. So if you fix it, for example, at 7,000 at the time, and the price rose up to 12,000, you wouldn't gain anything because you had forward sold everything. You get the point. So the forward sales, that is the disadvantage you get. So until you get your own finances, your own work, to be able to go to the market and then purchase, you will be at the back and call of the buyers or to the banks, and they take advantage of whatever happens in the season. So from what I said, I think going forward, if we are serious as a country and we want to own the cocoa and to be part of the pricing formula or whatever, get your own finances in a way such that you'll be stronger enough to be able to go to the market, not depending on somebody to finance it. That is the problem. So the windfall that came out of 2024-25, the price had already been fixed at a given price. Whatever came out of that, to me, it was minimal, and those will be used to finance your legacy debts. Yes, that is that's what I know, and that's what I think. That's what I've been saying, that going forward, the best way to do is to make sure that we have some escrow account somewhere. We put in money into it, and then be able to be solvent on our own terms. And then in future, we can trade well by hedging 50% and against futures, and then 50% on the spot, so that when the prices rise as it did in 2024, we could rake in a lot of money to the advantage of the ordinary worker, ordinary farmer, and also for the people, all the people in the cocoa value chain in Ghana.
Okay, coming back to Shadrach, when prices in Ghana drop significantly below those in neighboring Ivory Coast or even Togo, we see a surge in smuggling. Now, with the current price disparity, are we essentially incentivizing a black market or a middle neck or smuggling operation that will further drain Ghana's official export figures?
The smuggling economy thrives even beyond just this particular issue. So usually when there are price differentiation, especially when the price in either Cote d'Ivoire or Togo is higher than that of Ghana, there is always the likelihood of a smuggle into those economies to sell. And this wouldn't be a different case or a different scenario. Yet I think law enforcement authorities are also on their alert to protect the cocoa industry in Ghana, because once they do not do that, it means that more and more of our cocoa will end up in different economies, and it will account for the growth of those economies instead of the economy of Ghana. So I think it's something that will happen if those prices are higher than that of Ghana that has been slashed at the moment. From where I sit, I think that of Cote d'Ivoire will be lowering in the next cropping season. That will be in March, and that will be quite less than that which is being sold in Ghana. So I think cocoa farmers, despite the fact that they may be desperate in trying to get some aspect of their monies, I think it's a bitter moment. It's a difficult moment for them, and we eulogize with them in this moment. And we think that the state can play a bigger role in this whole scenario, since the Ghanaian cocoa sector has been supporting the economy for a very long time. And this is the time that we need to see the government do its work in terms of supporting the sector with liquid cash to be able to sustain the cocoa industry. Because before any other industry came into the limelight in terms of, let's say, exploration of oil and stuff like that, the cocoa sector has been the backbone of the Ghanaian economy. And there's a time that the Ghanaian government will have to show some level of a big state and a welfare state to the cocoa industry, so that we can be able to protect, sustain, and also this will be a learning curve towards bringing in certain solutions that will help protect the cocoa industry going forward. I think sustainability is key at this point, and we don't want to lose the cocoa industry in Ghana. We don't want our farmers to smuggle, and we don't want to also disincentivize the appeal towards investing into the sector.
Okay. Now, Nicholas, would want you to come back to what you said about Galamsey earlier, because we're seeing cocoa farmers sell their land to illegal gold miners. That's the Galamsey, because cocoa is no longer profitable. So if the $750 million debt crisis is not resolved, are we not risking a permanent land grab that could destroy Ghana's agricultural backbone forever?
Exactly the point. Yes, that is what is going to happen, because if that debt has to be taken care of by somebody, and that is government, if we are to sustain the business. Number two, this Galamsey thing is going to be worse than we see if we don't take immediate measures in dealing with the price gap, which has just been created as a result of the drop in the world cocoa price. So that is key. Well, my thoughts, my suggestion is this. We seem not to have control of what is happening to the Galamsey situation. So in sustaining the cocoa business, I think government should go back to how it was done in Kwame Nkrumah's days. We used to have state farms. Government should go into negotiation with the chiefs. Government has the control over the land. It's vested by law in the presidency. The president must exercise that responsibility or that power authority, and then get land situated in the cocoa growing area, secure them so that we can do mass production of cocoa secured by the police or the military or cocoa guards. I call it cocoa guards. That's my suggestion. So that we can then control, and then we're able to control control the yield. Because when you have secured land, which no one can sell it out to any Galamsey or intrude into that land to do whatever illegal mining they want to do, and government controls it by securing those people, then we can have sustainable cocoa production in the years to come. Number two, I think there's element we call LID, Living Income Differential, which was introduced in 2019 between Ghana and the Ivory Coast to sustain the families of the cocoa farmers. That $400 per ton, which was slapped, I think we must create a different account for that $400 below, so that we can use as an incentive for the growing farming. Because the farming community in Ghana, for example, are aging. And what do we do to entice the youth, the younger generation, into cocoa farming? Especially so when Galamsey gold production is high and Galamsey is paying so much. We need to do something as a country, and that is my suggestion. Create that state-controlled farmland for production of cocoa, create an escrow account or a separate account for the 400 LID living income differential on top of which the buyers are paying for, so that we're taking care of the welfare of the farmers, and then also to kind of create an incentive for the youth who would want to go into cocoa production. Okay. That is the way to sustain the business.
All right, Nicholas, sorry. Shadrach, Nicholas has actually listed a few solutions, but let's not also forget that Ghana and Ivory Coast formed the Côte d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative, that's the CIGCI, to dictate prices. Now, given that both countries are now considering or implementing price cuts, has the alliance failed in its primary mission to protect the living income differential?
I wouldn't say it will be premature to say the alliance has failed in this period, because it's more of a government reaction to these issues at hand in order to be able to resolve or try and salvage the situation. We should note that our economies are quite distinct and different, and as a result, their response mechanisms may not be similar. However, I think in order to solidify this alliance going forward, I think there should be broader consultation with between the governments in terms of these issues, so that we'll be able to try and resolve it amongst ourselves as countries, than taking unilateral decisions when it comes to issues like this, and making the argument that we have distinct economies, as I'm saying. I think that would be for the alliance. And in reaction to what Dr. Ackah said, I believe in terms of securing cocoa lands by the government, it's a laudable initiative that we can explore. But I think for the operation of such farms, if government is supposed to secure lands for the purposes of cocoa, and we have allies and also laws that seek to protect those lands, it should be operated by private individuals, since it has been a language that anything that government's hands are in, we do not make profits, or we do not even break even. We usually end up in debt, so that we give it to a private entity, or we should do government and private enterprise towards that endeavor to be able to sustain the cocoa economy.
Okay. Now, just before we wrap up quickly, Nicholas, let's have your thoughts, your final thoughts, while we talk about market volatility, because even after the global price crashed to $4,000 per ton, the retail price of a chocolate bar in London or New York has not moved an inch. So while Ghana's industry staggers under debt, global chocolate giants continue to report healthy margins. Is it time to admit that the living income differential was just a band-aid on a broken system that fundamentally refuses to value the human labor behind the bean?
Yeah, well, I have to let me what Shadrach just said. The alliance for me is not working properly. There's no legal thing binding them together because at a point, because we moved the LID, right? And then our cocoa became too expensive. And the buyers has told us that our cocoa has become expensive. On the side of the chocolate, yes, I agree with you. I mean, the chocolate prices has not changed. So at the end of the day, who is benefiting? The chocolate manufacturers are benefiting at the expense of the toiling farmer. So what do we have to think about? We need to think about increasing our processing. By increasing our processing, we also think about perhaps going into chocolate manufacturing. Local consumption of chocolate in Ghana is 3%, right? And then we have niche cocoa doing chocolate. We have Ghana Cocoa Processing Company also doing chocolate. But how much? We need to repackage our system such that we can be able to also produce chocolate locally. So once we process more of the cocoa, the government says that the vision of the government is to process 50% of all raw beans produced in the country. At the moment, the highest we have done has been 42%. So if we have to do 50%, then we must also think about not only processing for semi-processed as cocoa liquor, cocoa butter, cocoa cake, but also try to do produce chocolate by way of also investing into research into international market, what the market will look for in terms of producing chocolate locally and then distributing them across, especially intra-Africa trade as well.
All right. I actually still have so many questions to ask both of you, but then, time is not on our side. But I would love to thank you for speaking on this so in-depthly. Shadrach and Nicholas, thank you so much once again. And we hope to have you on the show again.